Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. In an anticipated press conference this morning, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams announced a 5-count indictment against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Adams says he's innocent. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has the details.
At approximately 11:30 a.m. Thursday morning, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams laid out a 5-count indictment involving wire fraud, bribery, and illegally soliciting campaign contributions. The expected charges were levied against New York City Mayor Eric Adams shortly after Adams held a press conference of his own. Adams says he's innocent.
It's an unfortunate day, and it's a painful day. But inside of all of that, it's a day where we will finally reveal why for 10 months I have gone through this. And I look forward to defending myself and defending the people of this city, as I've done throughout my entire professional career.
Williams accuses Adams of involvement in a multi-year scheme beginning in 2014 to commit fraud in exchange for money and property. He alleges that Adams began taking illegal contributions in 2018 at the start of his 2021 campaign.
He agreed to take contributions offered by multiple Turkish businessmen, several of whom he met in Turkey. Adams knew that these wealthy individuals could not legally donate in a U.S. election. Federal law clearly prohibits foreign donations. That's how we protect our elections from foreign influence. Yet Adams directed his staff to pursue this illegal money to support his campaign for mayor. And as we allege, Adams continued to pursue foreign money in secret well into 2021. And it didn't stop with his first campaign for mayor.
Williams says the mayor flew to different countries, including China, Hungary, and Ghana through Turkish Airlines, and that he paid nominal fees for trips worth tens of thousands of dollars, including upgrades and freebies. According to Williams, Adams was required to publicly disclose these gifts, but he didn't.
The mayor had a duty to disclose these gifts on his annual public disclosure forms so that the public could see who was giving him what. But as we allege, year after year after year, he kept the public in the dark. He told the public he received no gifts, even though he was secretly being showered with them. We allege that Adams accepted these benefits knowing that they were given to him because of his position.
Williams says there were some strings attached to these gifts.
And in exchange for some of those improper benefits, he intervened in the New York City Fire Department's inspection process for a building owned and operated by the Turkish government, allowing it to open even though it had not passed the fire inspection.
The mayor said Wednesday evening that he was targeted for speaking out against the Biden administration.
I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. Despite our pleas, when the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief.
At about 6 a.m. Thursday morning, numerous federal agents arrived at Gracie Mansion, the mayor's residence. They presented Adams with a search warrant and conducted a sweep of the residence and seized the mayor's phone. Adams' attorney, Alex Spiro, criticized the search, saying it was, quote, an effort to create a spectacle. Federal officials warned that more people would be held accountable.
The indictment of a sitting mayor is not just another headline. It is a stinging reminder that no one is above the law or beyond reproach. And it serves as a sobering moment for all of us who place our trust in elected officials. Today's indictment sends a powerful message to every elected official in this country.
Although the indictment named only Mayor Adams, other officials from his administration are being investigated. In recent weeks, several of them have resigned or announced retirement, including the police commissioner, the school chancellor, a top attorney, and members of the fire department. Adams may also face scrutiny for possibly maintaining communications with other foreign governments. The mayor says he will not resign. Meanwhile, the investigation is ongoing. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Hurricane Helene continues to intensify in the Gulf of Mexico as it heads toward Florida's Big Bend region. Forecasters warn of a catastrophic and deadly storm surge in some areas as the hurricane approaches landfall. NTD's Christina Corona brings us the latest update.
Helene was upgraded to a Category 3 storm Thursday with wind speeds of 125 miles per hour and is expected to become a major hurricane. As of 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the storm was 170 miles southwest of Tampa, traveling northeast at 16 miles per hour. Helene is forecast to make landfall in Florida's Big Bend Thursday evening, posing a significant risk of catastrophic damage. Governor Ron DeSantis gave an update on the storm.
The storm, it's coming. We're already seeing some effects in the southern part of the state. We're going to continue to see conditions deteriorate throughout the rest of the day.
DeSantis stated that the storm was never expected to make landfall along the Florida Peninsula's Gulf Coast, including areas like Sarasota and Tampa.
Because it's such a big storm, it's churning a lot of water. And so you're going to see surge all up and down the west coast of Florida. The water is going to rise, and that is going to create hazards as well.
A storm surge warning is in effect for nearly the entire west coast of Florida, with surging waters described as unsurvivable, potentially reaching up to 20 feet in some areas. A state of emergency has been declared in 61 of Florida's 67 counties, with several counties under evacuation orders.
If you're in the North Florida area, you do have time to evacuate, but that time is now. It is right now. You need to be moving to a location. We have shelters across the Big Bend area that are available. So please, if you need that information, floridadisaster.org/shelters to find out where a shelter is available for you.
Officials strongly advise residents to be prepared for potential power outages and to avoid driving on the roads during and after the storm. Forecasters have issued warnings for tornadoes and mudslides, prompting the governors of Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia to declare emergencies. President Joe Biden has declared emergencies in several states and will send the head of FEMA to Florida on Friday to assess the damage. After making landfall, the storm is expected to move inland over Georgia, with significant flooding possible in the southeast. Atlanta could see up to half a foot of rain. Christina Corona, NTD News.
President Biden meets with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House. The two discuss Ukraine's war effort, but not before Biden announced new funding for the country. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the White House.
Will Ukraine be allowed to use long-range missiles to strike targets inside of Russia? Well, up to now, President Biden has not given the okay, as such attacks could imply a proxy war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been pushing for it, and it may have come up during closed-door talks with Biden on Thursday. Even if such a change in policy occurs, it's unclear whether it will be announced publicly. Before the two leaders spoke, Biden announced another $8 billion in military aid to Ukraine.
Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail, and we'll continue to stand by you every step of the way.
Today we have a new support package, $7.9 billion. This will be a great help.
Zelenskyy then held a press conference with Vice President Kamala Harris discussing the war effort.
The United States supports Ukraine not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest. We will continue to provide the security assistance Ukraine needs to succeed on the battlefield.
And earlier Thursday, Zelenskyy met with leaders of the Senate, and a day before that, he met with leaders from the House, except for the top House representative, Speaker Mike Johnson. That's because of Zelenskyy's trip to Pennsylvania, where he met with state Democrat officials at an artillery plant. His trip is drawing anger from many Republican members of Congress. They say his U.S. taxpayer-funded flight amounted to a campaign stop. House Speaker Johnson then demanded the Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. be fired over this. And House Oversight Chairman James Comer opened an investigation into the trip. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Israeli forces have reported killing another Hezbollah commander in Lebanon. Meanwhile, residents in Israel shared their thoughts on the latest ceasefire proposal with the terrorist group. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Israeli forces released video on Thursday of a targeted strike that killed another Hezbollah commander. Israel said he was the commander of Hezbollah's aerial command, in which he directed attacks using drones, cruise missiles, and more. His death comes just a day after Iran's supreme leader said that killing Hezbollah commanders would not kill the group. Israel also said on Thursday that its forces had attacked 1,600 terrorist targets in Lebanon in the previous 24 hours. And Israel continues to urge civilians to move out of harm's way. Many of them are leaving Lebanon to go to war-torn Syria for safety, the border of which Israel has been watching very closely. On Thursday, the Israeli Air Force struck targets along the Syria-Lebanon border that were allegedly used by Hezbollah to transfer weapons from Syria to Lebanon.
In Lebanon, we're going to prevent any possibility of arms transfers in Lebanon from Iran to compensate for what Hezbollah was reduced by us.
Also on Thursday, Israel rejected a 21-day ceasefire proposed by the U.S. to pause the fighting with the Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this.
My policy, our policy is clear. We are continuing to hit Hezbollah with full force, and we will not stop until we achieve all our goals. First and foremost, returning the residents of the north safely to their homes.
A family member of a hostage who was killed in captivity in the Gaza Strip shared his thoughts on a possible ceasefire with Hezbollah.
We urge the leaders of the free world to make sure that this deal that they're working on is reached, and that this deal contains the release of 101 hostages who've been held in Gaza for 355 days now. It's not only a matter of how long it has been in captivity, but it is actually a question of whether they will be released alive or not.
Residents in Israel also shared their thoughts on a possible ceasefire with Hezbollah.
This is because when you let them 21 days, they will arrange again. They will bring new missiles. I don't believe them.
I'm not okay. No. I think that we must to finish with this problem with the Hezbollah and also with Gaza.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said a diplomatic solution is the only way to ensure that civilians on both sides of the border can return home. Jason Perry, NTD News.
The bipartisan House task force investigating the attempted assassinations of former President Trump heard testimony from local law enforcement officials involved in the security of the July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
The bipartisan task force released never-before-seen footage of the July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and questioned local law enforcement on their actions before, during, and after the first attempted assassination against former President Donald Trump.
So we knew there was somebody that was very suspicious. We also knew there was somebody that we weren't able to actually come in contact with, and we kept losing contact with him. We saw him with a rangefinder. We saw him doing things that were not probably in line with what people go to a rally for. At what point did somebody say, we're not sure the area is secure and safe?
We were certainly prepared for the missions that they had given us. There were additional things, obviously, that probably needed covered. But they never asked us to do that. They never tasked us with that.
One of the witnesses, Patrick Sullivan, a former U.S. Secret Service agent, recommended expanding the authority of the Secret Service to prevent security failures like the ones we saw on July 13th.
The failure of most Secret Service personnel in Butler to be informed about the specific threat facing former President Trump stands out. Currently, there is no statutory requirement mandating federal, state, and local agencies must report to the Secret Service information concerning threats against the president or other protectees.
Lawmakers pressed local law enforcement on the lack of a unified command center during the July 13th rally.
Unclear chain of command, technical issues, poor communication, couldn't identify who within Secret Service was final decision maker, no communication in real time, 2 communication centers. Secret Service said they had technical issues with the radios, a problem that was characterized as being common with the agency.
Republicans and Democrats both suggested that the Secret Service was responsible for the lack of coordination.
So Secret Service should have been aware.
Absolutely.
And they probably, had you been in charge, or in your experience, would certainly make local law enforcement aware, hey, we not only have ongoing plots, we just arrested someone in the United States putting down payments to kill President Trump. This is on top of the ongoing domestic threats. correct? Yes. You would make your counterparts aware.
This Thursday's hearing was the first the bipartisan task force has held, and their final report will be delivered on December 13th. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
2 legal cases against former President Trump appear to be on thin ice. Judges today questioning the basis of New York's civil suit against Trump. And Jack Smith is making what's likely his last attempt before November to bolster the 2020 election case. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Former President Trump aims to get a near $500 million lawsuit tossed. Today, his lawyers insisted on his innocence while brushing off the New York civil fraud case as an overly broad interpretation.
The Attorney General's very broad and sweeping view. So our position is narrow, which is that on the facts of this case, all these things I've referred to, no reliance, no materiality, Deutsche Bank saying we want to give them the exact same deal. And we have clear disclaimers.
New York State brought the case against Trump on grounds that he misled lenders by overstating his assets to get better loan terms. The first judge ruled in New York's favor, but now the appeals court judges are showing skepticism.
It hardly seems that justifies bringing an action to protect Deutsche Bank against President Trump, which is what you have here. I mean, you've got 2 really sophisticated parties in which no one lost any money.
There are at least 4 different public harms from the kind of misconduct here. First of all, when deceptively hidden risks are injected into the market, that does hurt the counterparties, and there was harm to the counterparties here.
Judges also questioned New York's attorney for other examples of a case like this, calling the massive penalty against Trump troubling. If Trump's appeal fails, New York could start freezing Trump's bank accounts and redirecting his assets. Meanwhile, in the federal election-related case against Trump, special counsel Jack Smith is working to salvage it after the Supreme Court's immunity ruling left him scrambling. Smith filed new evidence today in what's likely to be his last chance before Election Day to argue why Trump should be convicted. Smith aims to try to sidestep the immunity ruling by asserting Trump's actions in 2020 were made in his capacity as a political candidate, instead of as the President of the United States. The new filing is sealed and rests in Judge Tanya Chutkan's hands. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Vice presidential nominees Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance will be facing off in a debate next week. NTD's national correspondent Jason Blair brings us the latest and why this VP debate could bring in more viewers than in previous election cycles.
The Democratic and Republican vice presidential nominees will square off in their first debate next Tuesday. This will perhaps be their biggest chance to let voters get to know them better, as well as make their case for their respective campaigns and running mates. The debate will be hosted by CBS News at its New York studios. The rules are reportedly still under negotiation. In the past, vice presidential debates usually didn't generate a whole lot of buzz when compared to their presidential counterparts. However, this year's debate looks like it has a chance to gain a lot of viewers, as the VP candidates have been gaining more attention than in previous elections. Also, due to the lack of debates in general with the 2024 elections, it could be easier to cast a spotlight on the VP clash. The most watched vice presidential debate was in 2008 between Joe Biden, who was a Delaware senator at the time, and Sarah Palin, who was the governor of Alaska. As far as how each candidate is preparing, neither campaign has confirmed any specifics. There have been some unconfirmed reports from outlets involving anonymous sources, however, nothing concrete. Both candidates are, however, still keeping active on the campaign trail. Governor Tim Walz will be campaigning in Michigan on Saturday. Senator J.D. Vance has a rally scheduled in Pennsylvania, also on Saturday. Walz and Vance have not met in person yet, but have exchanged public jabs while campaigning. There hasn't been a second debate confirmed for either the vice presidential or presidential nominees, so this could very well be the last debate before the November 5th election. The debate is scheduled for 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, October 1st. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
In less than a week, vice presidential candidates Tim Walz and J.D. Vance will debate right here in New York City. NTD will have on-the-ground coverage, in-depth analysis, and a lot more prepared for you during our pre- and post-debate show on The Nation Decides 2024, presented by Steve Lance and myself. Watch it next Tuesday, October 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern. Former President Trump taking aim at Vice President Harris's border policies before her trip to Arizona. He also responds to the latest indictment against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. NTD's Iris Tao has more from Trump's presser at Trump Tower.
Ahead of Vice President Kamala Harris's border visit on Friday, former President Trump held an hour-long press conference here at Trump Tower in New York City to criticize Harris's record on the border. He called her the border czar and asked why she did not do what she's vowing to do right now 4 years ago.
She should save her airfare. She should go back to the White House and tell the president to close the border. He can do it with the signing of just a signature on a piece of paper to the Border Patrol.
Trump also emphasized the impact of illegal immigration by highlighting the current situation that he described as migrant crime surging in different cities, and also saying how it has taken away jobs from Black as well as Hispanic Americans. He also listed steps that he said he would implement on the day one of his administration, including by shutting down the flights going from the border to different cities of the U.S. transporting those migrants, as well as reinitiate the Remain in Mexico policy and reinitiate Title 42 and asking law enforcement for help to fix that issue. And Trump also commented on the latest indictment against New York City Mayor Eric Adams by saying he wishes him well, but adding that he warned that he will get indicted after he spoke out against illegal immigration in New York City.
I watched about a year ago when he talked about how the illegal migrants are hurting our city and the federal government should pay us and we shouldn't have to take them. And I said, you know what? He'll be indicted within a year. And I was exactly right.
And Trump also announced that tomorrow morning here at Trump Tower, he will be meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy upon Zelenskyy's request. And that's right after Zelenskyy at the White House had meeting with the current administration.
I'll meet with President Zelenskyy and we'll see what happens. But I believe I can work that out. It would have been, I will say this, it would have been a lot easier to work out prior to the start. And Putin never, ever even thought about going in.
Reporting from the Trump Tower, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The United States Postal Service is expected to be busy during this year's presidential election. The use of mail-in ballots keeps increasing. Congress today probing possible security issues that come with the use of mail-in ballots. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the highlights from the House hearing.
It is imperative that the Postal Service get this right.
The House Appropriations Committee on Thursday investigating the role the United States Postal Service, or USPS, plays in this year's election. The Postmaster General told lawmakers that the Postal Service makes sure all ballots are being handled correctly.
Our hand control throughout the system is a reliable hand control. Our people see ballots, they dive on them. There's been very, 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 very little proven other types of issues with us.
The committee's chairman says the use of mail-in ballots increased by 25% from 2016 to 2020, and he's expecting the rise to continue this year. Congressman Jerry Call asked about the process of dropping off mail-in ballots, specifically the number of ballots a single person could theoretically hand in.
No one's bringing you okay.
Thank you for helping me out there.
That's what I'm getting at. No one can bring you a pallet full of
individual. In fact, if we postmark, you cannot. Once we postmark that ballot, you can't take it back.
So when I put my ballot in that box, that is Postal Service mail at that point.
Postal Service mail.
And your employee's going to pay. Thank you.
Congressman Matt Cartwright from Pennsylvania asked the Postmaster General about a plan to cut costs after the election. The plan was postponed to make sure ballots get delivered smoothly. But the congressman says cost-cutting measures will still seriously affect everyday Americans.
People rely on the Postal Service to deliver their prescriptions, Social Security checks, other important mail. If faced with delays, rural Americans will experience longer delivery times or be forced to pay higher prices to commercial delivery companies, which is unacceptable.
And I think it's an unfair accusation, considering the condition that the Postal Service has been allowed to get to. We are not consolidating operations. I have opened operations around the nation. We have put sorting and delivery centers in communities that were old abandoned plants throughout the nation.
He added that the USPS plans to cut costs in a way that won't affect Americans too much. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
And joining us now to break down the charges and allegations against Mayor Adams is former Assistant U.S. Attorney David Katz. He's also a criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. David, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, to begin, as a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, what stood out to you the most in this indictment?
Well, I don't think it was really a lot of money, which you would have expected. I mean, one of the things that stood out to me was this is the same administration and the same U.S. attorney who was in power for 4 years. They didn't go after anything that former President Trump had done. And that kind of shocked me. I mean, I always thought there'd been collusion and conspiracy and everything else that was alleged against former President Trump. And yet this U.S. Attorney's Office seemed to never think that there was any foreign contributions that were laundered or that came about in an untoward way. And there was a timely prosecution of Trump. Now, whether the Supreme Court would have eventually knocked it out on presidential immunity, we'll never know. But the fact that it was never brought, that surprised me. And then in terms of phony campaign contributions, look at the fact that Trump eventually got prosecuted in New York City, didn't he, for the Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen and mischaracterizing those campaign expenses, right? But not by the feds, not by the same office that went after Mayor Adams. So I think that he certainly has an emotional point, if not ultimately a good legal one, that there seems like a little something fishy here.
And as you mentioned, Adams is being accused of taking bribes and accepting illegal campaign contributions from foreign sources, including Turkish officials. Now, prosecutors allege the corruption stretches back to 2014 when Adams was borough president of Brooklyn. What type of evidence must the prosecution have to bring forward a case like this against a sitting mayor?
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has decided in some very high-profile cases, including one against the governor of Virginia, that there has to be a very clear quid pro quo. Basically, you know, the old expression is you can't talk yourself out of trouble, but you can certainly talk yourself into this kind of federal criminal trouble. It depends what you say that they can prove a quid pro quo. Also, emails will do just fine. And there are emails that other people sent, and they're apparently cooperating with the government and saying, before I sent that email, I approved the content with the mayor. And if people believe that, that's damning testimony. But basically, they're going to need to have words out of his own mouth or approved out of his own mouth that there was indeed a quid pro quo. He could have done things for Turkey, a lot of things for Turkey, and he could have accepted a lot of things from Turkey. They need to prove in the federal criminal case for bribery the quid pro quo.
And David, in your assessment, how serious are these charges against Adams?
Well, I think they're very serious. He'll hit a lot of pressure right now that he should resign. I feel strongly philosophically that he should not resign. What does the presumption of innocence mean if the fact that charges are hurled at you that you resign office? And I know he's got a lot of people who want to be mayor. Let them run in the election and beat him. That's how you become mayor in my book, not to try to hound him out of office. So I think that, you know, this idea that he can't run the city, I mean, if you accept that, right, you can hound anybody out of office. You can always say that they can't really maintain their post properly because they have this specter of indictment. They have this, you know, sort of Damocles over their head. But, you know, to me, he should be allowed to defend himself and continue on as mayor. Let them beat him in the next election in only a year if they can.
And expanding on that, the mayor is maintaining his innocence and says he won't resign, of course, despite the calls for him to do so. What do you think the next steps will be for his defense?
Well, the way, if he doesn't resign, which I don't think he will, there's a way that the governor can remove him. But, you know, it's totally unprecedented. And I think that she would be in uncharted waters. So I think that she will stay her hand. So I think that he will stay on. I mean, unless there's really bombshell evidence, that comes out. And of course, he's upset that stuff has leaked out already. And that's always a problem in these cases. You know, ask Hillary Clinton, how did all that stuff leak out of the FBI against her in 2016? And it always seems that the FBI has a lot of leakers. And these are grand jury materials that it's actually a criminal violation to leak them. So he's also obviously upset about that. But the next thing that will happen is he'll appear in court. He'll say he's not guilty. He'll have, I think, really no bail set. He's not any kind of flight risk or danger. And then he'll prepare his defense. He has absolutely fantastic super high-paid lawyers defending him. I think the city budget ends up paying him, but I'm not sure. I think the lawyers are paid by the city. But again, he's the sitting mayor. He's presumed innocent. Governor Christie had huge legal bills when he was in trouble as governor of New Jersey. Huge millions of dollars of legal bills paid by the taxpayers of New Jersey.
And as you mentioned about the leaking, Adams today saying that the media found out about the indictment before he or his attorneys did. He stated that, quote, leaks from a grand jury are a felony, adding you can't break the law to enforce the law. What do you make of his statement and how the media obtained this information?
Well, I think we don't know exactly how the media obtained it. But if you were betting, probably some agent, the assistant U.S. attorneys tend to be more cautious, although, of course, not everyone's Caesar's wife. But normally it's the agents. And it's usually not somebody connected with the grand jury. The grand jury is admonished and they're lay people, and I think they're scared to death to leak. But it seems that some of these agents want to have a friend in the press. Maybe they're thinking about their future career after they're FBI agents, and they seem to leak. I don't know that in this case. But who leaked on Hillary, right, back in 2016?
Now, Eric Adams is the first sitting NYC mayor to be indicted while in office. What is the significance of this in terms of precedent?
Well, I think that it's very troubling in these cases. He says that he was made a victim, that he was made a target because he was helping the people of New York City, because there was this influx of migrants and he felt he had to help New York City. It was being deluged, even though he was a Democrat and it was a Democratic administration that he says wasn't vetting or making sure that these people weren't paroled into the United States by the millions. He did something about it. I don't think that that's true, Tiffany, because he was apparently targeted before that happened. I mean, who knows whether they intensified that as a kind of a political payback. That's his story, and that may be a narrative that he ultimately cannot back up. But it's, of course, very politically significant, and I think it's worrisome. We don't want to have too weak prosecutions, but we don't want to have prosecutions that are, you see these people with tickets. They went after somebody for the Hamilton tickets that they got. They've gone after some other people. And meanwhile, as I say, this same U.S. Attorney's Office under the same administration in timely charges didn't bring them against former President Trump with all of what sure looked like shenanigans that could have timely been brought under the statute of limitations, but weren't by this same office, the Southern District of New York.
David Katz, former assistant U.S. attorney and criminal defense attorney, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
What do New Yorkers think about the charges against Mayor Adams? NTD spoke to some of them to find out.
He's a politician in the city. Nothing is surprising, but it's surprising that he actually got indicted. Usually it seems people just go off somewhere.
I thought it could happen any minute because I just don't think any of this is right. And what's going on in the city is just crazy. All of his people that he put in, everybody's, getting investigated. This is a terrible thing for the city.
It's a lot of cronyism. I really do hope that the city gets better and we identify a proper, suitable, and a well-fit candidate to run for our mayorship.
It's surprising to me. I'm not originally from here, but, looking at it last night I think I saw it on Instagram, it was a shock. So, hopefully he gets out of it, but we'll see.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Top artificial intelligence firm OpenAI reportedly plans on going for profit, a big shift away from its nonprofit roots. Here's the story.
OpenAI is planning on becoming for-profit. CEO Sam Altman said Thursday it may become a public benefit corporation.
It's inevitable given the amount of money they have to spend. Because it's not like they're all taking that money in salary, right? They're spending hundreds of billions in infrastructure, hundreds of billions in model training.
AI expert Ashley Monraj says it's logical to go for profit. It's harder for a nonprofit to raise money because investors have their profits capped.
They're competing with Google and, you have a big tech players too. Llama is pouring a lot of money into that. And you even have XAI and others that are actively trying to compete.
Monraj says they need to do this to remain competitive in a cash-intensive industry.
If you want to be the world's most capable model, then
you won't have a choice. You'll have to find ways to pay for it.
Alexander de Ritter is the co-founder of AI firm Smith OS, which uses OpenAI's tools. He agrees OpenAI needs enormous amounts of money.
Even if they are closed and they are for profit, so long they continue to lead the world's research and continue to put out great models and make them accessible over API as a developer, I will continue to be very grateful.
Billionaire tech magnate Elon Musk sued Sam Altman earlier this year. Musk says Altman has betrayed the firm's founding mission to ensure AI benefits all of humanity. Regarding becoming for-profit, Musk posted Wednesday night, "This is deeply wrong."
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in baseball, where the case of Shohei Ohtani's 50th home run ball that we reported on yesterday was already going to auction has now taken a twist. What is the latest on this?
Yeah, there's been a lawsuit filed over the ownership of the ball. Now, when we reported on this yesterday, the owner's name wasn't actually publicly revealed. It was kind of just assumed that they must have caught the ball at the ballpark in Miami last week where Ohtani hit it. Now, that's where the dispute is, because according to the civil suit, it was an 18-year-old fan named Max Mattis says he was at the game for his 18th birthday, was standing by the left field fence when the ball Ohtani hit came towards him. Now, it doesn't sound like he caught it on the fly, but he successfully grabbed it in his left hand. This is according to the lawsuit, and intended to keep it. Then he says an older, stronger man trapped his arm between his legs, wrangled the ball from his left hand. Now, the suit asks that the ball be kept in a secure location pending the outcome of the litigation. Now, meanwhile, Golden Auctions, who's just about set to take this ball to auction, said they've been named in the case. There are no allegations of wrongdoing by them, and they still plan on starting the bidding tomorrow with an opening bid at $500,000. So if the court is going to act on this, they have to do it very quickly. Now, of course, this is the ball that Ohtani hit that put him the first ever member of the 50-50 club, home runs and stolen bases. So it's obviously very valuable.
Moving to college football, number 1 ranked Texas plays their first SEC game Saturday when they host Mississippi State. Now, have they announced whether quarterback Quinn Ewers will start?
Not publicly anyway. Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian said they haven't decided on starting quarterback. Ewers listed as questionable. He's still got that oblique strain. Sarkisian wants to give him, though, every opportunity to see if he's ready to play. Now, fortunately for Texas, they have freshman Arch Manning ready to go if Ewers can't. And Manning played very well in relief the last 2 weeks. Now, not many teams have that kind of luxury. That's probably why they're ranked number 1. It sounds like Ewers will play, though, if he's healthy. Now, on the other side, Mississippi State will be starting a true freshman at quarterback, Michael Van Buren, after starter Blake Sharpen was lost for the season with a shoulder injury. So really, long story short there, Texas is major favorites to win in this game. I think 37 points is a spread that I saw.
Well, looking at the NFL schedule, we have a Giants-Cowboys matchup tonight on Thursday Night Football in New Jersey, with both teams sporting identical 1-2 records. Now, what makes the Cowboys 6-point favorites here?
Overall talent, I guess, of course, you can look at almost any position. The Cowboys should have an advantage. It's really explicable that they're only 1-2. It is early in the season, so I'll grant them that. They beat Cleveland handily in week 1, but I don't know how New Orleans and Baltimore handled them with such ease the last 2 weeks. Both those games were played in Dallas, too. So it seems just a matter of time that they put it together and start winning. Meanwhile, the Giants, they really did not have high expectations this season. There were questions of which way they would go in the offseason, like would they try to draft a new quarterback or something. Instead, they watched probably their best player, Saquon Barkley, leave in free agency to their rival Eagles. But they did draft Malik Nabers in the first round. He has turned out to be a great wide receiver. But of course, they need more than him to be able to compete. In any case, the game starts at 8:15 Eastern tonight on Amazon Prime.
Shifting gears to the baseball playoffs, both Kansas City and Detroit completed 3-game sweeps today. So how does that shape the postseason race?
Well, it keeps those two in line for the last 2 playoff spots, the wild card spots, and eliminates everyone else except for Minnesota. Now, the Twins play tonight, down 2.5 games with 4 games left, so they're really hanging on by a thread. But they do own the tiebreaker over both Kansas City and Detroit, which is crucial. Now, in the National League, very crucial Braves-Mets series has been derailed by Hurricane Helene. They didn't play last night, and they won't play tonight. The Mets are tied with the Diamondbacks for the last 2 spots. The Braves, though, are just 1 game behind, so they'll have to play a doubleheader on Monday, the day before the playoff starts, to make up these 2 games. Now, elsewhere, the Padres play the Dodgers tonight. Both those teams are in the playoffs. It's just a matter of where. Because the Padres still can win the division, but they're down 3 with 4 left. So it looks like LA is going to win. It looks like it's inevitable. So a lot going on in baseball this week.
Well, Davis, always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.